afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very sunny and very warm South Africa. I am here in the Sabi sands with a few female kudu this afternoon, and I would like to welcome Indian Mills and Shelton Park Elementary Schools to your drive. Hi, everybody. I believe you're doing habitats and food chains and adaptations for your classes today, so please don't forget we are live, we are interactive. You must send through questions, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and also on the YouTube chat. I am Noelle, and on camera I have Senzo. There's Senzo's three fingers. He says hello. So we have our kudu who has magically come out in beautiful fashion for you to see nicely. So an adaptation that the kudu has many adaptations. First off, let's rewind a little bit. This is an antelope as opposed to a deer, which many of you would have in North America and in Europe. We don't have any deer in sub-Saharan Africa, but they're similar in body structure because they eat similar food sources. So this kudu has very big ears. It's adapted to living in thick bush, and those big ears are to hear better. And then it's got these wonderful stripes along the side of the body to help camouflage. It's called disruptive marking. So basically, when it hides behind a bush, those stripes break up how the body shape is. And then it's got tiny little feet. And those little feet help it so that it is quiet as it moves through the bush. If you can see there, very tiny. And when it walks, it puts one foot down and then the next foot exactly in the same spot so that it makes even less noise. Now, on the front of this kudu is a little bird called an oxpecker. This oxpecker's whole job is to take ticks and parasites off of the animal. Now, it is a helper bird. It does assist in lessening the tick load, so if there's too many ticks on the animal, sometimes the animal can get sick. But also, this bird is looking for the blood that's inside the tick. That's the adaptation it has created for itself, is to be able to climb all over the bird with its very stiff, thick tail, and then get its blood source that it needs from the ticks that have sucked the blood out of the animal. Now there's another oxpecker just on the back at the back end. You can see he's got a little bit, and then of course he runs away. Like always, they never sit still, those little oxpeckers. Birds are very difficult. Now as far as food chains go, where do you all think this kudu fits in the food chain? If you had to think about an animal that might be like this near where you live, maybe a white-tailed deer, or if you have elk where you live, anything large like that, what would eat those animals? And then what can you think of in our sphere in Africa that would eat these kudu? Any thoughts? You can send those through. Tell your teacher to type the questions and we can answer them for you. Now notice the tiny little lips that it has as it's moving around, and it's not eating any grass, it's not putting its head down, it's browsing off of those trees. So a browser is an animal that eats leaves, and then a grazer is an animal that eats grass. If we can find you some impala later, which is another type of antelope we have, I'll show you how they eat, hopefully be able to show you how they eat leaves and grass. Lyric, very good question. You're asking Lyric if it is prey or predator. So Lyric, because this animal is a browser, because it eats leaves, that 99.9% of the time will show you that it is a prey species as opposed to a predator. A predator is something that eats meat. But I'm going to rewind a bit on that, and sometimes you'll see lions eating grass. Now, they're not eating grass for the nutrients, like something like an impala would do. They're doing it because they have tummies that are hurting them. Similar to if you have a cat at home or a domesticated dog at home, they sometimes do that when their bellies hurt. Another way that you can tell that this is a prey species, it's gone behind the tree, is where the eyes sit. I'm going to see if I can get you a different view. Lyric, if you look at where the eyes are, if the eyes are on the side of the head, it's more likely a prey species. If it's in front of the face like us, like humans, it's a predator. And that has to do with how they see. So a predator's vision is binocular vision, like this, straightforward, like ours. Now, there's another very large prey species that my friend Tristan has, not far from where I am here. I just want to see if we can get a little bit of the eye of this kudu first. There's a young male there. Maybe we can try that. So you can see that where the eyes are situated on the side of the head. Beautiful. Young male, tiny little horns. He's not fully grown yet. So notice that the eyes are not right in front, but towards the sides of the face there. Okay, now you might get a better view of this prey vision like we're speaking about with my friend Tristan. So let's head on over to him so that you can see an even larger prey species.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a very sunny, beautiful South Africa. No, I am not the larger prey species that Noel was referring to. My name is Tristan. On camera today, I do have VM, the wildebeest, and we are coming to you live from South Africa, and it's a special welcome to the two schools joining us this afternoon. So I hope that you guys will have a wonderful time with us, and remember to ask lots of questions through your teachers, and we will try and answer as many as possible. But I'm not sitting here in the sun being baked by the glorious rays for nothing. There is a beautiful animal that is sitting over there, and it is a dangerous animal, and one that we have to be a little careful of because these guys are quite grumpy. So this is a herd of buffalo, or Cape buffalo as we know them. So these are not water buffalo like you get in Asia and parts of Australia. These are called Cape buffalo. Now you may see that there is a little fence in the background there. These buffalo are not fenced in. This is just right on the edge of the reserve where everybody comes into the park, and it separates some of the communities from the animals so that we don't have a situation where animals are hurting people and people are hurting animals. So that's just a little boundary on the northern side of this massive wilderness area. We're in an area where these animals can move over 8.5 million acres, which is really large. So it is a big space, but for now they've decided to lie there, and the reason why they're lying there is because it's a nice open area. It's a great place for buffalo to be able to graze and to be able to feed on nice short grass, because buffalo like short grass. Also, they can spot any lions from here. Now, Wyatt, you're wondering if animals are friendly. Well, the animals depends on which ones we're talking about. Things like the buffalo, when we're in the vehicles like we are now, then there's no worries whatsoever. They've learned that the vehicles are not a predator, they're not an animal that's, well, we're not going to hurt them in any way, and so they're very friendly to the vehicles. But if you're on foot and you're walking around, then it is a very different story, because buffalo then become very aggressive and they'll try and then chase you away. So you've got to be really careful of these guys, and for all of us guides out here, so Noel and myself, we have to be very careful of them when we're walking around looking for other animals. Ryan, you're wondering if they're born with these horns on their head. Well, Ryan, no. So what you'll find is when they're born, they don't have anything there. There's just a smooth head, because otherwise the horns would hurt their mommy when they give birth. And so they have the little one, and then it starts to grow. Within a few weeks, you start to see the little horns coming out, and slowly but surely they grow straight up, and then after time they start to bend, and they then make these big curled horns that you see. And what you will notice there is that some of the horns are different. There's boy buffalo that have got the big helmet on the top of the head. So the one on the left hand side there, that's a boy buffalo, and the one on the right hand side is a girl buffalo. You see how the horns are different? One has got almost like a helmet, and the other one has got a sort of hairy top to its head. So that's how you can tell the difference between the boys and the girls here. The girls also have a much more brown red coloration compared to the males that tend to have a lot more black dark color. Now these buffalo, I'm pretty sure, are going to be sitting and resting because it's still quite hot. Once it gets a little bit cooler, then you're going to find they're going to stand up and they're going to start walking, and probably they're going to try and go to somewhere where there's water, because our buffalo love water and they will try and get as much water as they can. Sophia, you're wondering how the animals survive in the heat. Now, I was talking about water just now. The animals will need to drink a lot of water, particularly things like buffalo. They'll also have to seek out shade when it's hot during the middle parts of the day. So you'll find these animals will all go underneath a big tree where they're able to then stay out of the direct sun. That's when we see, well, that's what we see from the antelope species. From the predators is a little bit different. So if we see something like a lion or a leopard, which hopefully we'll find this afternoon for all of you, you'll find that those animals will sit with their mouth open and they'll pant. So I don't know if you've ever had a dog or a cat, you'll know that your dog pants quite a bit, and so what it's doing is, as it's panting, the hot air from inside the body is going over its tongue. Now its tongue is covered in saliva, and that saliva, when the hot air comes, it causes the liquid to turn into a gas, and that process causes cooling. So it's like an air conditioner on their tongue, and so that's why they breathe so heavily, to try and cool themselves down so that they can then stay nice and cool in these hot places like Africa. But what I think we're going to do is, because our buffalo are in an area that's quite busy, I think what we're going to do is just leave them for a little bit. We'll come back to them maybe just now. I'm hoping they are going to go to a water hole that's not too far from here, and so what we'll probably do is just let them carry on sleeping for a little bit and then come back later. Right. I did see a lizard here just now as well, but I see my lizard has disappeared. I was hoping my lizard was going to stay behind because it was sitting right next to my car door, and it now seems to have gone away. Amber, you're wondering how old the buffalo are? Well, they're all different ages. There's some baby buffalo there's some big adult male buffalo, and most of the buffalo that we see in this area generally are anywhere from newborn babies all the way up until about 15 years old. We don't really see too many buffalo over that age, and the reason why is because when animals get old out here, they become a little bit weaker, and they don't have the same strength, and so the predators like lions and leopards and hyenas and wild dogs and cheetah, they'll go after those older animals and they kill them. So most of our buffalo are much younger animals. They're around 15. If you had to go to somewhere like a zoo, you would find that those buffalo, because they fed very well and they don't have to deal with predators, they'll live probably more to around 20, 21 years of age. But here, because of all the predators, unfortunately, that is not the case. Right, now I said we're going to carry on. We're going to go and try and see if we can find some other things. I'm hoping to see if we can maybe get some elephants to show all of you. And while I do that, let's go back across to Noelle and see what she's managed to find in the last little bit.
I have an animal that I hope all of you know, if any of you have watched The Lion King, or if any of you are big viewers of African wildlife. This is a warthog. This is Pumbaa. Pumbaa in Swahili, which is spoken in East Africa, which is about 1,600 miles away from us, up north and east. Pumbaa means warthog in Swahili. Now, this is a little Pumbaa, and now in The Lion King, when Pumbaa is wandering around with Timon, he's going the whole time. Warthogs actually do that, especially when they run away or when they get scared. So this little warthog ran from us a bit, and now he stopped to watch us. He wants to see what are we going to do? Are we possibly going to injure him? And he's deciding that we're probably not going to hurt him because he's walking away, but he definitely doesn't want to stick around. Now, I don't know if you noticed that he was covered in mud. We're sitting at this little mud pan, and it's very warm, so that warthog has decided to roll inside of this mud pan to cool himself down. Buffalo, like what you saw with Tristan just now, will do the same thing, and I heard that Tristan also wants to see if he can possibly show you an elephant. Elephants will also not necessarily roll in mud. They can do, but they like to throw mud on them, again, to cool themselves down. Most of the animals we see out here can't sweat like we do. They need other ways to cool down. Rain, you've asked a very interesting question about how do the animals stay so calm. Now, Rain, for us, the animals see us as part of their natural environment, and in general, as long as we don't do anything to upset them, like be super loud or drive really fast, they're fine. Warthogs in general are very smart, so they just tend to move away anyway. But yeah, in general, they're okay with us because they see us as part of their natural environment, and we don't do anything to hurt them. Now, Senzo is pointing something out for me. Oh, beautiful. It's just... oh, there we are. Thanks, Sens. It's a little blue waxbill that's coming down for a drink. Look at that gorgeous baby blue color. So it's warm, but it's not so warm that the birds don't want to move around. This little waxbill is going to be eating things like grass seeds, and then you can see those ones in the front there just jumping around, and then going down to the water for a little bit of a drink. Now, the way that these birds cool themselves down is to either dip themselves in the water, or sometimes they stand in the shade and they open their beaks, and it helps let the hot air out. Beautiful little things. Now, one of the adaptations that these little waxbills have done is to create their nests, tiny little nests, using blades of grass inside of thorn trees. And if I can find one for you, I'll definitely show that to you. And that's to help... oh, there we go. There he's eating his seeds. Did you see that? Jumped right on the stalk of the grass, pushed it down, and then grabbed a seed off. And the little nests that they build inside those trees help. They not always work, but it helps to keep snakes from getting inside and either eating them or eating the eggs. There we go. Picking a few more grass seeds off. Now notice that they're not eating all the grass seeds off the one blade of grass. They're going to different grass blades to do that. Now part of that is so that they're not staying still for too long, because if you stay still for too long, you will get eaten. So hopping around and making sure to get to every little spot they can, and also by doing this, they're making sure that they're not eating their entire food source. So they're a little bit here and a little bit there. Elephants will do the same thing. Elephants like to eat a lot, but as long as they're in their correct population numbers, so they don't have an overpopulation, they'll eat a bit here, eat a bit there, and then move on so as not to overeat their food source. Everything here works in balance. It's incredible. Eleanor, that is an interesting question. I don't think I've ever had that question before. You're asking, Eleanor, how long can waxbills live? Now, I can't tell you the actual answer. I don't know it right off the top of my head. I know lots of things, but you can't know everything. So this is something I'm going to have to go up and look in my books when I get home and learn something. I've given myself, well, you've given me homework, but I would guess that they live for a couple of years. I wouldn't guess that they live for longer than, say, 3 or 4 years, but that's just from their size. That's really beautiful there. Beautiful light, beautiful reflection. Angelo, super good question. Can animals see in color or just in black and white? So Angelo, birds can see in color, and part of why birds can see in color has to do with plumage, so the feathers, as well as if it's a bird that's looking for nectar. But also there are some birds that not only see in color, but they see into the UV spectrum. So it's towards the end of the light spectrum, where, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a black light, where things that are white or neon colored show up in a black light in a dark room. They can see into that sort of spectrum. And then something like a predator, like a lion or a leopard or a cheetah, they see in black and white and shades of gray. Now, with something like an elephant, I debate myself. So many things I've read, many books I've read, and many people I've spoken to say that elephants see in black and white as well. But I've had a few instances where I'm pretty sure that elephants can see in muted colors. I have a couple of friends who guide as well who are colorblind, and the way that they see the bush, I would imagine, is how an elephant sees a bush. So they have trouble seeing between green and red, for instance. But the red will show up as a different shade of a greenish or a brownish type color, as opposed to black or white or gray. So just as an interesting thought there. You guys have very good questions. You must keep them coming. Keep them coming. It's the best way to learn, is to ask questions. All right, I'm trying to see if there's maybe some little terrapins, which is a freshwater shelled creature, very similar to a turtle that you would see in the ocean. But I think while I'm busy looking, my friend Scott, who's also out on drive with us, would like to show you something, and I'm thinking it might be something very special.
Well, I wish it was something special. I haven't been doing a very good job this afternoon. Tristan and Noel are doing far better at finding the animals, and I have yet to find anything. But that could change at any moment. As you can see, the bush is quite thick, and we could be surprised by any kind of an animal around any one of these corners. My name is Scott, and I am teamed up with Ferg on camera. I'm hoping to possibly try and find you guys some elephants, because I know Tristan and Noel haven't found you any of those yet, and we've got a report on our radio that there were some elephants heading into this general area. Noel, I'm live at the moment. Chat to you later. So what we do is we use the radios to chat with everyone and all the other guides, so that we work as a team. And some of our teammates have told us that there were some elephants coming into this general area. So that's exciting. And some of you would like to know, what exactly do warthog eat? You were looking at warthog with Noel a little bit earlier, and they eat a whole bunch of animals. I'm joking, they don't eat a whole bunch of animals. They mainly eat plants, but from time to time they will also eat meat. So they're omnivores. They don't just eat vegetation, they eat mainly vegetation and a little bit of meat from time to time. I've only ever seen them chewing on the skin and sometimes nibbling on the leftovers that lions and leopards won't eat. So they're like normal pigs, I guess. Normal pigs also, the ones that we also sometimes like to eat, will also eat a variety of food, but mainly vegetable matter. It's interesting, there's not too many omnivores out here. The warthog's one, the baboon's another animal that will eat mainly vegetation but also eat meat from time to time. And at this time of the year, when there's lots of baby antelope around, sometimes they will even catch those, which is obviously sad for the little antelope, but everything needs to eat. So sometimes it can be a little bit hard for us to witness the animals making their kills, but they need to. Hello Hunter, you'd like to know how much will an elephant weigh, or how many pounds will an elephant weigh? A big elephant bull will weigh as much as 12,000 pounds, about 6,000 kgs or 6 tons. So they are absolutely ginormous. And to give you an idea of how tall they are, I am 6 foot and I come up to here. A big elephant bull will come all the way up to here, the top of its head. So they're incredibly big. I'm going to jump back down and you'll still get an idea of how tall big elephants can be. And what's further interesting, seeing as though we're on the discussion of what animals like to eat, elephants only eat plants, but a big elephant bull can eat as much as about 500 pounds of salad every day. Hard to believe. Now, once the elephant's eaten that much, it also means they need to go to the toilet. So we often see a lot of big, almost soccer ball sized piles of poop thanks to the elephants. And I'm sure it won't be long before we find some that we can show you. Hello Aiden, you would like to know, how do elephants protect themselves? Well, the big bulls sometimes travel around in small groups of 3 or 4 bulls together, but even if they were on their own, they're so much bigger than everything else here that they're generally not going to have any trouble. They've also got their big tusks that they can use. But what the herds of elephants do with young babies, what they like to do is team up into little herds of maybe 10 to 15 or 20, and their safety in numbers will apply. But even the females are so much bigger than all the other animals out here that they generally don't have too much of a problem. They're one of the animals that can probably be the most relaxed out here in the African bush. Now, I told you that I'm not doing very well this afternoon, but you'll be glad to know Noelle is still doing a great job. She's found you the animal that I was hoping to show you.
We have found something, thanks Scott, we have found something big and gray and it flaps its ears and it goes roar. And here we go. What could it be? There we are. It's elephants! Yay! I love elephants. They always make me happy. It's also a sunny day, which makes me super happy just in general. We've got a beautiful female elephant who's coming over to say hello a little bit. She's got a little bit of a funny ear at the back there, and she's heavily pregnant. Look at that fat belly. So she'll be pregnant for 22 months. That's just under 2 years. And then she'll nurse that baby for another 2 years, sometimes up to 3 years, depending. Matea, great question. So Matea, a group of elephants is a herd of elephants, but then its special name, the collective noun, is a parade of elephants. That's one of my favorite collective nouns. The warthog that we saw earlier is a sounder of warthog. It's a leap of leopard if you see more than one. A parade of elephants, a pride of lions. There's some really great collective nouns out there. My absolute favorite is with Tristan when he had the buffalo. It's an obstinacy of buffalo. Buffalo are very obstinate, which means stubborn. I love that one. Now, this is a nice big herd that's moving through. I'm just going to coast down the road a little bit here, very quietly. So Scott says that the elephants eat salad. They do, Madeline. They do like salad a lot, just like me. So the vegetables that Scott is talking about, the salad that they like leaves, and they like to have fruit in their salad. They like to put a little bit of grass in their salad. They like tubers, which is similar to a potato, so a little bit of potato in there. But, you know, if you were to give them people food, which is not good to give wildlife people food, but if you were, they would eat things like oranges and probably tomatoes and things like that. And now you were also curious, or you were talking about earlier, about how do elephants protect themselves? Well, they protect themselves from the sun by swimming and also throwing mud on themselves like we talked about earlier. Then they protect themselves just by sort of being big. And you saw that female elephant come around behind us. If she was upset, let's say we were lions, she really doesn't like lions, she would trumpet and put her ears out and kick up dust and just be very loud and very big. Now, we've seen lots of vegetarian animals out here today, but my friend Tristan has an animal that likes to eat meat that is very special and very elusive that he would like to show you.
Indeed, it is as special can be, because we're with my absolute favorite animal, the leopard. And this is the biggest of the big males that we get here in Djuma. He is the dominant male leopard, and he has been with us for the last 2 days. He's been hanging around in the area, and it's because he's got a bit of a sore paw at the moment, so he's feeling a bit sorry for himself. But look how beautiful he is. You can see he's now just found himself a little bit of shade. And earlier we were talking about how animals stay cool, and I was telling you that cats like to pant a little bit. So you can see that's exactly what he's doing. His mouth is open and his tongue is going back and forth, and he's breathing quite fast, and that's because he's trying to cool his body down as much as possible. So he's using that water vapor going off his tongue to cool the blood in his tongue and send the cooler blood back into the body. The other thing that he's doing is, you see how he's pushing himself right into the shade so that he can get as much shade on his body as possible. He's also lying in a spot where there's a bit of wind that's blowing. You can see the grass is moving a little bit there, and so that's all helping to cool him down. But oh, there we go, it's time for a nap. At the end of the day, it's still a little hot for these leopards. They like to only move around in the crepuscular hours. Now, when I say crepuscular, what I'm talking about is the hours around dawn and dusk. So that's the name for it. Most people will tell you that leopards are nocturnal animals, but actually they spend most of their time moving around just before sunrise and just after sunset. So those are the kind of active periods that they like to move around, when there's just a little bit of light in the sky, but it's a bit gloomy. So you know, when you go home at night and it's just as the sun is set and it's just before it gets dark, that's the time that leopards like to move around. They know that that's the best time, because the animals are starting to come out of the shady areas from the day, and they're starting to go to open sections, and the leopards can then use the fringes of those open sections to hunt, and they can try and then catch some of the herbivores like the kudu that Noel saw earlier. Tianan, you're wondering how fast a leopard can run. Well, leopards are fairly slow in comparison to something like a cheetah or even the lions. Leopards will do about 65 kilometers an hour, so in miles that will be about, I think it's close to about 35 miles an hour, somewhere around there, that they will run at. So they are not as fast as a cheetah that will do close to 60-70 miles an hour. So this cheetah is a much faster animal, and that's because it's built for speed, whereas our leopard is built for power. And the reason why a leopard is built for power is because leopards, when they kill the animal, they like to take their food up into a tree, and so that means that they can get it away from lions and hyenas and all of these other animals. And so they have to have very powerful, strong legs and muscles on the chest, and that means that slows them down. The heavier they are and the more muscular they are, the slower that they run. So cheetahs are sprinters and leopards are more powerful wrestlers, if you want to compare it to us as people in sport. Horton, you're wondering why the leopard has spots. Well, I believe some of you are studying adaptations and those kind of things. Well, a leopard's spots are all there to help him camouflage. When he's in areas like this, if you look in that shady section, you see there's a bit of shade on his coat as well as a bit of sun. So when they're in thick areas with lots of leaves and trees, the sun going through those leaves causes dappled light. Now, dappled light is patches of light and dark, and so his spots on his coat help him to camouflage and to blend in with his environment and make him invisible to prey animals. And it's why leopards are really hard to spot. We're very lucky here in this reserve that we're able to see leopards regularly because they're quite relaxed, but normally they're very shy and they get into a thicket, and it is absolutely incredible how easily a leopard can disappear in a thicket when it goes into it. So the spots are very, very useful. Now, Amber, you're wondering if they're born with spots. So Amber, yes, they are born with spots. They're just very, very close together. So when they're first born, they almost look like a black ball, because the spots haven't extended out just yet. So you see on him, it looks like his spots have exploded, and there's in the middle. When they're still little babies, those spots are all quite close together, so they're quite dark in color. But as they get older, so the spots go out a little bit, and then you get what we call these rosettes. So they do have spots as babies, and in fact, even their skin is spotted underneath the fur because of the dark hair follicles and then the light hair follicles. So they do have a spotted coat. Even if you were to shave their fur off, there is still spots underneath there, which is very, very cool. So Fiona, you're wondering about the whiskers. Well, whiskers are also a very important part of a leopard's or any cat's life. Those are there to be able to help sense things. So when I say sense things, it's like their eyes and their ears and their noses. The whiskers have little cells in them that help them pick up vibrations. And so when they're walking through these thickets and it's dark and it's dingy and they can't quite see the antelopes that are moving around, these little whiskers pick up the movement in the grass, and they're able to tell the leopard what's going on in front of them. Also, it tells them what's coming towards their face. So if the whiskers pick up a branch or something like that, they know to close their eyes so that they don't hurt their eyes in any way whatsoever. So very important for a leopard to have. Right, well, our leopard is going to be very sleepy. He's probably going to spend most of the afternoon here, and so are we, because I absolutely love leopards. One person who also loves leopards is my friend Scott, and I hope that he's going to find one as well this afternoon.
Well, you may have just seen a few little birds flying away there. We were hoping to show you some carnivores that were busy hunting, unlike sleepy Tingana, but I'm so happy that you guys have got to see him. Isn't he the most beautiful, beautiful big cat? So we saw some white-crowned helmet shrikes that fly around in a family flock doing their hunting, and we were hoping that we were going to get to show you them. They are very beautiful, different to Tingana, but beautiful in their own right. They've got a bright yellow ring around their eye and a little bit of a crown of white feathers on their head. But the birds can be tricky, and I always wonder, once technology gets a little bit better, then we'll be able to follow the lives of birds a little bit better, because obviously it's tricky to follow things that are flying when we are stuck on the ground. Very good. Now we're moving through an area where I'm hoping to find a herd of wildebeest. There was a herd that gave birth to a youngster this morning and another one yesterday, and who knows, maybe another one will pop out this afternoon. So that's who I've decided to head off in search of, and while we carry on with our mission, we are going to send you back to Noel.
So we are sitting here, there it disappears, with one of the most fascinating adaptations and one of the most interesting habitats for a large mammal in the African bush. It is a water hole, and there are 3 hippopotami that are in here. Now, a group of hippopotamus is called a pod or a raft of hippos. There, one's popping its head up again very nicely for us. We'll try and, there we go. So their habitat is inside the water, but their habitat is inside the water during the day or when it's very hot out because the sun burns its skin. Because they need to come out at night and they will go and eat grass and then come back in during the day for the most part. Sometimes in winter, when the sun is not so strong, they'll come out during the daylight as well. So the adaptation that they have developed, a couple of adaptations they've developed, is they mate underwater, they give birth underwater, and they also nurse underwater so that they can do all of the reproductive things they need to do while still being protected from the sun. Amber, interesting question. Do the animals have different insides than people? So, Amber, with a mammal like the kudu and the leopard and the elephant and the hippo that we've been talking about, most mammals have the same inside. So you have kidneys, you have a backbone, you have a heart, you have lungs, you have intestines, but sometimes the way the stomachs work are different. So, for instance, the kudu we saw has 4 chambers to the stomach. The elephant and the warthog and the hippo are hindgut fermenters, and then we as humans just have a single stomach and cannot digest things like grass. So, but in general, it's very similar. Now, something like a insect will have a different inside body, so that those types of animals have different insides, but most mammals are the same. So mammals are covered in hair, some more so than others, and they nurse their young with milk. That's all types of mammals. There's special mammals like a platypus, which we don't get here, that still lays eggs, but in general, most mammals have babies that grow inside and the hair, and then they nurse their young like we talked about. It's very interesting. Now, this hippo, some more adaptations that this hippo has is it has a very special eye. The iris, the inside, the pupil is shaped like the letter T, so that it can see above and below the water at the same time. They can close their nostrils and close their ears and hold their breath for sort of 10 minutes. Sometimes, there you go, sometimes a little bit longer, so they can stay underwater nicely. Maddox, you read my mind, my friend. Maddox, they can stay underwater for about 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit more. And they tend not to swim. They either walk or bounce on the bottom of the water. But that being said, I've got a friend who works up in Zambia, which is another African country that is a bit north of us. And he was working in one of the national parks there when they had a really big flood. And he watched a hippo swimming down, well, actually up the flood waters. So we always assume that they didn't swim, but they can in dire circumstances. Something that would be similar to a hippo, a cousin of a hippo, would be a manatee, which you get in parts of the States, or dugong. Thomas, you're wondering what do hippos eat, and Max, you're wondering how much they eat. So Thomas and Max, they eat grass in general, although I've seen hippos eating meat from time to time. I've watched hippos steal kills away from crocodiles up in Kenya and the Masai Mara and eat them. But for the most part, they eat grass. And now when they're eating grass, how much do they eat? I would guesstimate, if something like an elephant, which would be about 4 hippos or 5 hippos stuck together, can eat about, a big male elephant can eat about 600 pounds of food a day, a little bit less. I would guesstimate that if a big male elephant is made up of 5 hippos, that a hippo would then eat maybe about 120 pounds of food a day. That would be my guess. They're very, very big, I know, and very fat, but they're covered in lots of fat and blubber so that they can bounce a little bit. All right, well, let's head back to our predator that we have for you today with my friend Tristan and see what little Tingana, well, actually big Tingana, is up to.
Indeed, he's not little at all. He's a very large kitty, and I think he'll be quite offended if we had to call him little, because he is the big boss of the leopard world in this area. At the moment, though, he's not too interested in anything we've got to say. He's really having a nice long nap, and it's because it's still too hot for him. You can imagine if it's a very warm day outside and you have a big jersey on, how uncomfortable it is. I know, because I had a jersey on just now and I took it off very quickly because the sun is really quite warm, so I think he's going to rest for quite some time still. Now, Chloe, you're wondering how much they sleep. Well, leopards are not quite the same as some of the other big cats in that things like lions will sleep for almost 20 hours a day. Leopards are a little bit more active than that, but on general, they'll kind of sleep anywhere between sort of 12 and 15 hours in a 24-hour period. So they do sleep a lot, and the reason why they sleep a lot is because when they are active, they use a lot of energy very quickly. When a leopard chases prey animals and has to run at high speed and wrestle with these prey species, it's utilizing a lot of its energy, and so unfortunately it then has to sleep a lot to store that energy. Right, now one of my colleagues has got a bird, I'm not sure which one, but before it flies away, let's head across to them.
We have found a beautiful woodland kingfisher. Check that gorgeous turquoise blue. Oh, then it goes down into the water to cool off. It's bathing itself, and then away it flies to go and rearrange its wings. How very neat was that? Now, this kingfisher actually doesn't eat fish, and I know it looks like when it was diving there, well, maybe it was trying to catch a fish, but it is in fact just bathing itself and cooling down. This kingfisher actually eats insects. Most of our kingfishers eat insects, so their name is not actually very appropriate to what they do. There he goes. He shakes off his feathers, busy preening his feathers. Preening is to clean and rearrange and make sure everything's in the correct pattern for flight. Now, after he's done doing all of this, he's probably going to start looking for food. He's going to look for butterflies and for daytime moths. There he flies. Beautiful. For daytime moths and maybe dragonflies, maybe some beetles. We will have to wait and see. We might find another one as we come back. So Tingana, beautiful, beautiful male leopard. I'm actually sitting here hoping that we might get a little bit of a cat sighting or possibly some more elephants that come through. But I think while I'm waiting, let's head back to Tristan so you can keep looking at that gorgeous, gorgeous leopard.
Well, Noel, I hope your elephants do come down shortly. And how beautiful is that bird? It's one of my favorite birds that we get out here, those iridescent blue wings and white chest. It is just one of the most phenomenal species, and I am quite jealous of that woodland kingfisher because it's having a good bath and enjoying some cool, refreshing water, which I think would be quite nice. I wouldn't mind jumping into a dam or some water swimming pool myself because it is quite warm out here, and it seems like a good idea to go swimming. Our friend Tingana, though, I don't think would like to swim at all. Cats are not the most sort of happy about being in water. You'll find that they often try and avoid it as much as possible. Although I have seen leopards crossing rivers and various other places before, but they'll try and keep out of the water as much as possible. Now, I was saying earlier that our male has got a bit of an injury, and his left leg is the one that is sore at the moment, but that doesn't seem to have stopped him from finding food, because if you look at his tummy is a little bit round. You see that? So he has at least been finding food somewhere. I'm not sure what he's eating, but he has been finding food. I think what he's doing at the moment is taking advantage of the fact that we're in the beginning of summer, and so that means lots and lots of antelope. So things like impalas and kudu that Noel showed you, they're having all their babies at the moment, and their babies, when they're born, are still a little bit wobbly on the feet and a little bit kind of nervous, and they don't really have experience and know how to evade predators. So if he finds tiny newborn babies, he can often grab them before they're even able to run, and so I think that's what he's being able to try and hunt and look after. Now, there's another animal that leopards sometimes hunt. I don't think this male would be doing it because it's a little bit too fleet-footed for him, but let's go across to Scotty because he's got one of those prey species.
Yes, we found a little Steinbok that would be far too quick for Tingana in his current state, and to be honest, even Tingana, when he's in fine form, will have trouble catching one of these tiny little Steinbok. They are incredibly fast antelope, and they're quite secretive as well, so it's tricky to get good views of them. It's just, as you can see, moved behind a whole bunch of branches. Let's see if we can move forward a bit and get you some more views of him. He's a beautiful big male, but he'd only come up to about my knee. They're tiny little antelope. The smallest antelope we get here, slightly smaller than the grey duiker. And I haven't seen them for quite a long time because I've been up in Kenya. And good to be back in the Sabi Sands, an area where I'm more familiar than Kenya. And looking forward to spending time with some of the animals like the Steinbok that you don't get up in Kenya. It's not the only one. Also the Kudu you don't get up there, the impala. And also something that's changed since I was last year was this very road we're driving along. This was never a road before, and it's the first time that I'm driving along it. Now, I've just seen a bird fly off to the right, a very pretty bird. Hopefully it's not going to be like the helmet shrikes that evaded us earlier. Where did it go? Seems like it may have done a runner, or a flyer rather. It was a green wood hippo. Hello Lyric, you'd like to know what is the difference or the differences between a cheetah and leopard. And there's quite a few differences. Leopards are more bulky in their build, so you could compare leopard and cheetah. If you were to equate them to dogs, you would make the cheetah a greyhound, a very quick and slender dog, and the leopard would be more like, not a Labrador, maybe a Rottweiler or something a little bit more chunky and strong. Leopards also have got rosettes, so kind of a circle of black rings or black markings with a caramel center, whereas the cheetah have got solid black spots. The cheetah have also got black tear marks that run along the side of their nose, whereas the leopard doesn't. So there's a few of the differences. Very good. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to all the school kids that were joining us, and it's been great to be on safari with you, and we're going to send you back to Tristan before you guys leave.
Now, all you can see there is a little tail that is sticking out of the bush, and that's because he's decided that he's going to go and park himself a little bit more hidden than where he was originally. So he's, I think, maybe finding a little bit more shade to try and stay cool. But I was talking earlier about his camouflage, and you can see now exactly how camouflaged a leopard can be. When they go and lie in dappled light and thick grass, it almost becomes impossible to spot him. You can imagine if you were driving past and that tail just drops down, you really wouldn't be able to see him at all. So it's an incredible amount of camouflage that he's got, and you'll find eventually he'll settle down again and the tail will drop down. Now, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for with all of you today. I hope that you've had a wonderful time with us, and that you've enjoyed the day and the little safari through Africa, and that you have a wonderful day at school the rest of your day, and that you don't get too much homework, and hopefully we'll see you on a safari sometime in the future. Right, there we go. So that's the schools. They've gone off and are going back to go and do some work, as good school kids should be doing, and now we can carry on with our afternoon. So it's a reminder to all of you that have just tuned in, or the regular viewers that are watching, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter if you want to get hold of us and ask us any questions. I think what we're going to do is reposition ourselves, because at the moment we can't really see too much of Tingana. I'm sure if we just go round the bush we should be able to see him just fine, and actually might help a little bit, because at the moment we're staring directly into the sun, so we'll try and just get a little bit of a better view on our big male leopard. He's still very sleepy at this stage. I don't think he's going to move too much. I think we're going to have a situation where he's probably going to spend most of the afternoon here and try and kind of rest it out. And let's see if we just move a little bit, so you can see there's some guests there on the vehicle, so they've come out to see what's going on, and very lucky that they get to spend it with our big male leopard. Now, while we reposition, I believe Scott has found one of the kings of the predatory bird world.
We certainly have. It's a martial eagle. It's just taken off, and Ferg on camera is doing an incredible job staying with it. Who knows, maybe it spotted some food, or maybe it just wants to show off how well it can fly. And isn't that an awesome scene? It's hard to see how big this bird is, because there's no perspective when it's up in the sky, but its wingspan is as long as I am tall. They have got ginormous wingspan of over 2 meters, which is longer than your average door. and I'm sure it's not going to take long before it finds some hot air thermals, and then it's going to not even be required to flap its wings. It'll just be able to float above us fairly effortlessly. Now, these birds of prey, to give you an idea of how big they are, I'll tell you what food they can feed on. They've been known to catch baby antelope, baby impala, and that kind of a sized antelope, that Steinbok that we saw earlier, certainly would fit into the size of prey that these guys can take down. So very, very formidable aerial hunters. The Marshall eagle. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. It's still a very hot afternoon, so like I said, it should be able to find some nice hot air thermals still rising up off the earth, which it seems to have found now. And I often think to myself when looking at birds of prey soaring above us like this, how wonderful it must be to have their capabilities to be able to fly, and not just fly, but fly with incredible precision. And on top of that, they've got incredible eyesight. So it would be like flying around with a pair of binoculars strapped to your head. They can scan the earth below them, looking for possible prey from a very, very long distance, and then swoop down at high speeds to catch it. Wonderful. Now, there is a small herd of impala here, so I'm just going to creep forward a little bit and see what they're up to. I've seen one or two males so far. It could just be a bachelor herd, or there could be a few females around, but by the looks of things, it seems to be a bit of a boys' club. And they are taking it easy, enjoying all of this lush green vegetation, which is a relatively new situation for them. 2 or 3 months ago, this area would have been brown and dry and dusty with not too much food to eat. But since the rain started falling about 2 months ago or a month ago, the vegetation has very quickly reacted, and there's been a boom of new growth. So good times for the antelope. It's a bit of a catch-22. They've got tasty food, but it also means they've got thicker vegetation within which the predators can sneak up on them. And you'll notice that the leaves are blowing a little bit in the wind. This will aid in any predators trying to sneak up on these impalas. Now, what's interesting is this guy, he may have an itchy head, but what I think he's trying to do is actually rub a scent gland, which is just below his eye, onto that little bush. Or was it just an itch? Hard to be certain. Well, I know we've just been discussing the new growth and new life that's booming through the Sabi Sands in terms of the vegetation, but we are going to be sending you across to Noel, who's sadly got a different story to tell.
Fantastic and momentous, but unfortunately I think it's just been a bit too much for our wild dog friend. Now I am sitting over here with what's left of him, unfortunately, and I know everybody, this is very sad. I know you are all hoping that when I got up here to do an update for everybody on his condition that I would have something better to say. I don't think he has passed away because of that hyena that was here. It's nothing like that. I think that it was just too much with his injury, and he actually couldn't get enough to eat, unfortunately. So he's just over here, and I can actually see the wounds on his back right leg from where that lion got into him. They've been opened up a little bit by flies. You can actually see, it's hard. I don't really want to move the body. It's a little bit disrespectful, but you can actually see the 2 claw marks and where they punctured in. And then it's been opened up a little bit. He's in the exact same place that we saw him. I believe it was 2 days ago. So I think that shortly after we saw him with the last update, I think that was the last time that he managed to function, because he really hasn't moved at all. So I'm very sorry that this is the conclusion for us. Again, I do wish that it had been something different, but it is nature. It is a natural occurrence. It is the wild, and these things do happen. It's amazing to be able to follow everything throughout its life, and I think that this is a better closure than what happens with some of our other characters we get to view on the show, because when another character goes missing and then we never know the end of it, it leaves a little bit of an empty hole, and we as humans like to wrap everything up nice. Not that this is nice in any manner, but we do like to wrap things up in a complete fashion. Now, getting away from the sad bits, I have not been this close to a wild dog since I helped relocate a pack many years ago, and there are some physiological interesting things about the dog, including the feet and including the ears and including the mouth. I've chatted with James about what we're gonna do with what's left of him. Now, we can either leave him out here and let nature take its course and let the insects break it down and possibly a scavenger will come, or the ecology team might do something different. Now, the ecology team of the Sabi Sands might decide that they want to come and collect the body and do some testing. They might want to test for things like rabies. They might want to test for things like canine distemper. They might want to just have a look at the body. Now, that is not our decision at all. That is some other people's decision, but I will keep you updated as far as I know as to what's going to happen with that. So again, very sorry that this is our end. Senzo's doing a bit of a prayer for our wild dog. He's actually quite upset at the dog passing on. He really wanted this dog to make it through, as I know we all did. So I'm going to leave him to rest in peace. And again, sorry it's not better news, but the insect community is doing their job. They're breaking everything down. You'll also get detrivores that will come and help break it down. But while I am busy getting back up from my sad little position and meandering back to the vehicle, I think let's head on over to either Tristan or Scott, who hopefully has a little bit better news to share with you.
Now, it is me, not Scott Dyson, it is the other bearded fella, and unfortunately it's a very sad story, that wild dog, but it is nature, it is the way things do go, and unfortunately, you know, the injuries sustained must have been far worse internally than they were externally, and it's always a sad thing when you see that. You can see we've managed to get some view of Tingana at the moment. He's sitting in the thickest bush possible. If you drove past here now, there is no ways you would spot this leopard if he lay down flat. I promise you, you cannot see anything from any other angle than what we're at right now. And so we're kind of just watching him, and he's still panting away and sleeping. And I have a funny feeling that he's going to get hot where he is. The sun is going to hit him quite quickly. There's not much shade where he's lying, and I think he might go back towards the road, which would actually be much more pleasant for everybody involved. It would allow us all to be able to see him a lot better. And I've really enjoyed, I know he's injured and I know that he's not, you know, in his healthy fit self, but I've enjoyed spending quite a lot of quality time with Tingana. I got to spend the whole morning with him this morning as he moved around on quarantine. He was lying beautifully out in the open with this big thunderstorm behind him and lightning, and it was really quite something to see. And then he kind of meandered his way around quarantine and then eventually ended up right close to where we are now and then fell asleep. But it was yesterday afternoon we also spent some time with him, and so it's been really nice just to spend some really good quality time again and just really sort of hang out with him and see how he goes about his afternoons. I was saying to Wiem though that he must be feeling a little under the weather, because Tingana is not a leopard, in my experience and in the period of time that I've followed him, that really likes to lie on and next to roads. Normally he does a lot of patrolling and you find him on roads, but once he decides it's time for a rest, he tends to cut off into the bush and he tends to go into an area where you can try and find a nice thicket to lie down, much like what you see now, and where you can then have a little bit of a nap. Oh boy, is your paw sore? So there we go. You see what I was saying? I think he's going to come out onto the road. So I think he's going to lie down on the road itself. I think he's not comfortable there. He's in the sun. So what I'm going to do is just go forward a little bit. I think he's just sitting now with his face tucked out. But before I go forward, I've got to try and not slap myself with a bush, as you can see here. So while we do this, let's go across to our other bearded ranger for the afternoon and see what bird he's got this time.
Well, we've got a beautiful bird, a lilac-breasted roller. You can possibly hear its partner calling nearby. It's a beautiful bird that makes a very horrid noise as far as bird song goes. And let's see if we actually can't show you the other one as it calls, because I'm sure a lot of you don't believe that such a beautiful bird can make such a horrid noise. It's just up over there, right above where my finger was, Ferg. If you just zoom into the bottom of the tree there, right at the bottom branches. There we go. Well done. Okay, now let's see if it continues to chatter. It could well be a breeding pair. At this time of the year, they will be breeding, and they breed in... There it goes. One more time. It's calling softly now, not as loudly as it was before. And I'm not sure why it's making such a racket, if it's trying to chase off other lilac-breasted rollers from this area. Like I said, they do nest in holes and trees, and there's a lot of competition between birds for these nesting sites because a lot of birds can't make them themselves. They rely on other animals to make the hole, abandon it, and then they can go and live in it afterwards. I remember closely following a pair of lilac-breasted rollers who were nesting actually just further down the same road that we're on at the moment. And once they moved out and their chicks fledged, some squirrels moved in. Ooh, is it going to fly? If it does, be ready for a flash of brilliant turquoise. I think they look most impressive when they are flying, these birds, because they open up their underparts that are covered by their wings, and it's a beautiful bright turquoise color. But it seems fairly settled for now, unless of course it spots a little insect below. It may swoop down to catch it. They do like feeding on small insects like grasshoppers. Well, it's quite hot now, so maybe it's just enjoying relaxing. Hi, Roshni, you'd like to know if there's any way of distinguishing between a male and female lilac-breasted roller, because they look so similar. And no, not that I'm aware of, unless there's a slight chance if they were sitting right next to one another. Usually the females are slightly bigger than the males, and that's a general rule for most birds. But it's very difficult to see, and I've certainly found it very tricky and never been certain who's who. Now, we've got another beautiful scene, also with some birds that are the kings and queens of floating. And they're doing just that. There's a couple of vultures floating about up there. And who knows what they've been up to today. Maybe they've already been able to scavenge some food, leftovers from a lion or leopard kill. Or maybe they're still searching. Hi, Ashlyn. Back to the topic of the rollers while we watch these vultures do their thing. You'd like to know if this is the only species of roller that we will get in the Sabi Sands. And no, it is not. It is here throughout the year, and it is the most common roller, that's for certain. But we also, at this time of the year, get their cousin that comes on holiday to South Africa for our wonderful summer, and they come all the way from Mediterranean Europe. And they look very similar to the lilac-breasted roller, except that they lack the lilac breast. They're a uniform kind of turquoise color, and I think it's fair to say they're not as impressive as these individuals. So maybe we'll get lucky and be able to find you a European roller. And further north into the Kruger National Park, you also get a broad-billed roller, as well as the racket-tailed roller. So there's a number of different rollers that you get in South Africa and as well as the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, but this is the one we see most commonly here in the Sabi Sands. Another update regarding migratory birds, and I forgot to tell you this a little bit earlier on. I should have. There's some very, very exciting news. Some other birds, just like the European roller, have come from further north. These are called the carmine bee-eaters. And I chatted with Tristan today to see if he had seen any yet this summer, and he hasn't. And yesterday on Bushwalk, I got a glimpse of two of them on our northern boundary. So I'm hoping that we are going to see more carmine bee-eaters going forward. They are very, very beautiful. And what I'm going to do is just get my little bird app out so that I can show it to you quickly. And the carmine bee-eaters come from kind of Central and West Africa. So they come from just south of the equator and then all the way down through Botswana into South Africa. So that's something that we can look forward to. Here we go. So this, I'm going to have to get the glare correct. This is a carmine bee-eater, and I'm going to flip through slowly to show you some photographs of them, because I don't think the artist's picture did them justice. Look at how incredible those colors are. So that's another bird that we can look forward to spending time with in the coming months. And Lily, I couldn't agree more. It is amazing how many birds migrate. I've actually forgotten exactly how many will migrate down to this part of South Africa, but I'm fairly certain it's over 100 birds that will come from far and wide into this area just to enjoy the summer months. Very good. I'm wondering who else we have to look forward to seeing. Possibly the European storks haven't made it yet, or white storks. Alrighty. Good, we're going to continue on our mission. I think I'm going to slowly make my way to Chitwa Dam for the first time. I've never been on and around that area, so looking forward to exploring a new spot. And while we do that, we are going to send you back to Tristan and Tingana.
Indeed, and you can see the beautiful velvety coat of our dominant male leopard just slowly beating to his breath as he takes a nice rest in the shade. He's slowly come out now. He's actually right out in the open, thank goodness, and he's far more visible than he was earlier in the day. It's quite an interesting thing, because I thought he was going to stay in that thicket and try and kind of spend most of his afternoon there, because it seemed as though he had a nice little place to hide and he kind of could spend the day in the shade. But I think the sun got to him a little bit and he far prefers being right out in the open. You also probably find far less parasites in the shorter grass than in that longer grass. Scarlett, you're wondering if leopards recognize human voices. Scarlett, I don't know. They're intelligent animals, and no doubt their sense of hearing is far more superior than what ours is, so I would imagine, yes, that is the case. I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that these animals are not able to determine different sounds. I'm pretty sure they can even determine the different pitches of the engines of the vehicles that drive around here. But whether or not they recognize our exact voices or associate anything to the different voices, I'm not quite sure. There's his beautiful smiley face that's nice up and close. So any of you that want to know how to ID Tingana, there's a nice big smiley face on his shoulder that we often use. So you can see it right in the middle of the frame. It's kind of side on, so there's the two eyes and the little sort of half circle that is there that sometimes you can use. When he stands up, it's a little bit more straight, sort of turned up, and you can actually see it a lot easier. But you know, at the end of the day, like I say, I think these animals are far more intelligent than we give them credit for. So I suspect that they do can hear different tones and different pitches. Whether that influences their behavior, I'm not quite sure. Like I say, I think that remains to be seen and remains to be studied. At the end of the day, you find that Tingana's behavior with myself or Noel or Scott or James is pretty similar. He's never really any different. He's fairly the same with most of the guides, and so it seems as though even though he might be able to recognize my voice or recognize the tone of the car, it doesn't really seem to affect his behavior in any way. And so it's a difficult thing then to measure, because at the end of the day, how would you know that he is associating a certain thing with our voices? What would be interesting is if a negative experience had to happen to him, or a positive, so maybe, you know, if we had to keep feeding him or we had to keep chasing him, would he then respond to my voice every time if I was in different cars? That would be an interesting thing, but obviously we're never going to do any of that, because at the end of the day we don't, one, want to feed him, and two, we don't want to chase him, because at the end of the day we like viewing Tingana and love watching him walk around and do his natural thing, and so we won't be doing any of those things. What's wrong, boy? Your paw is still sore, isn't it? You can see the way that he gets up at the moment. He kind of lifts the paw up. He doesn't really want to put too much pressure on it, so still not very comfortable at this stage. Safari Wildman, you're asking if I know exactly what is wrong with his foot. I don't. I really don't know what's wrong with him at all. I mean, I've tried to look. I know somebody sent me a screenshot, and I can't remember who. I do apologize. My brain is a bit mushy in this heat, but somebody sent me a screenshot, and it looked like there's a small hole on the sort of outer side of that wrist area, or just above the toes, that might be causing an issue. But for me, it looks more like it's an internal thing, so maybe a little ligament or a muscular strain or something like that. It reminds me a lot of Shadow's injury. The way that Shadow walked is very similar to the way that Tingana is walking, and I would imagine that he will be okay. I mean, we've seen Shadow, she still limps a little bit and is a little bit kind of ginger on that front leg, and it's taken some time, so it might be that. You never know, maybe he's even broken one of his small feet, the small bones in his foot. It's difficult to say. There doesn't seem to be any visible swelling either, although he hasn't walked enough and stood close enough to me that I can actually really analyze it. So hopefully this afternoon he will get up and stand on the road, and then maybe we can get a really nice look at that paw and see what's going on. But there's definitely discomfort there. The amazing thing though is that it seems as though there must be a lot of swelling and lactic acid buildup in it, because he walks, and this morning we had him walking, and he walked very badly in the beginning, and as he walked more and more slow, it started to ease up. He was still limping, but he got a lot more of his normal gait back, and he was kind of quite steady on his feet, and he was even jumping up and scent marking and rubbing his face and landing on that foot without kind of toppling over or anything like that. So while I think it is sore, I think the more he walks on it, the better it feels to him at the time, except then obviously it gets stiff and sore when he starts to rest again like this. So when he stands up this afternoon, it's probably going to look really bad, because he's been sleeping in this area most of the day. Saber, you're wondering if I ever figured out if we can see his protruding claw in his tracks. Well, Saber, I actually haven't looked at Tingana tracks in quite some time, because the last couple of days that we found Tingana, we've literally just bumped into him. I haven't even had to look for a footprint. The first day he crossed over from Little Gari directly in front of us, and this morning we drove out of camp, and there he was sitting in the middle of quarantine, so we didn't even really have to track. And this afternoon, you know, we've kind of stumbled upon him on the road as well. So what I'll do is I hope that he'll walk at some point today, and maybe then we'll be able to see, and I'll have a really good look and try and pick up if that claw does show in the track. I would imagine on a surface like this road surface, you can see is quite a hard surface with a thin layer of sand on top of it. It's not a very thick layer there, and so I would think that on this surface it would be very difficult to actually pick up that claw mark. But in soft sand like the Mulawati or one of the drainage lines, definitely I would imagine that claw will be visible and we'll be able to see it, and especially now because it's on his right foot, and so he's favoring his right foot heavily, and so a lot more weight on that right foot is really going to dig that paw down, and that claw mark should show then in his track over the next little bit. So we'll definitely keep an eye out, and I hopefully will be able to show all of you when we do find it. And while I kind of sit here and watch Tingana daydream and hope that he'll get up at some point during the afternoon, let's go back across to Noel and see where the road has taken her from the wild dog.
Hi everyone. Alright, so sad about our ending, but unfortunately life is life, so we're going to carry on. I'm just busy trying to get a hold of the guys who have one of our Birmingham mails that we found this morning. So if you'll just excuse me for 2 seconds. Stations with Medora and Gala come in with for Noel. Afternoon, can I come and join you, please? Copy, thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. Just needed to communicate with them very quickly, and on our way we have now found some elephants. Okay, so earlier we had a nice breeding herd of elephants, but they meandered out of view, and now we've got part of a small breeding herd of elephants, and unfortunately I didn't see them in time, so this little one is a bit perturbed with me, going, oh my goodness gracious, how dare you drive the car the way that you drove the car, you silly human. I'm going to go join my friend. Now I can hear the rest of the herd in the background. There's a bit of branches breaking and trees breaking. And as that one meanders off, we still have one that looks like it's doing a little bit of geophagy, which is eating dirt. Or soil, rather. Just trying to take a little bit of a better view. Oh, it's found some mud. So it was taking the mud and putting it in its mouth, which is geophagy, and now it's busy throwing a little bit of mud on itself. I'm wondering if possibly if I back up a little bit, if we might not get a better view. So let me just try that quickly. See if we can manage. Senzo, just let me... Is that good? There we go. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So that's from the little bit of rain. Well, I say a little bit of rain. We had rain this morning. We put our roofs on and then it stopped raining, and then halfway through our private rehearsal the skies opened up and just came down like you wouldn't believe. Now that I'm actually properly looking around like I should do, I'm seeing the rest of the herd nicely. So we have just in front of us a big beautiful female, and I think for now she's going to be possibly the best view that we have, and there's also a few youngsters down here, so I'm just going to move us down so we can have a nice look. You know how much I love elephants. There's also a small baby that I actually think is the one that I want to focus on for now, because babies are always cute, and baby elephants are probably one of the cutest things you'll ever see, especially when they're young and they're all wobbly and they can't really function and they run around. Those ones that Jamie had a couple of days ago, where the very, very small one was jumping on its cousin or sibling, was probably one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. So I'm hoping maybe we get a little bit of goofball action out of this one here. I find elephants extremely enigmatic, and I find them also very calming at the same time. Like, this is a type of sighting that I could sit in for hours and hours and hours. I really enjoy them. I also enjoy how similar they are to humans. So Louis Lion, I think what you said was lion, leopard, elephant, coffee, safari live. I like that very much. Mine would be wild dogs, elephants, red wine, and coffee together on the same line, and then being out in the bush. I think I'm gonna go along with you. So this little one is busy playing with its probably older sibling, but it could be cousin. They were just cuddling a little bit together. Look, look, look. I'm sorry, it's so cute. So very cute. So I would guesstimate that this little one here is probably about 6 months old, roughly. I have to wait to see it until it goes near mum. And its older sibling is being playful with it, but then also a little bit protective because of us. Look there, there's the protection. Like, hey, you, I'm watching my younger brother here. Careful. They are just like humans in that regard. One day, many years ago, here's your story time with Noelle. We haven't done story time in a while. One day, many years ago, I was watching a herd of elephants coming down the road, and there was a tiny little baby about a month old, and it was crying and crying. It just wanted to nurse from the mom. And you could see this look on her face like, oh, please, please, just leave me alone. And two of the either older siblings or cousins, depending, came up on either side of this little one, and came onto either side like this, and then just started walking it up the road, and then turned around and walked back down the road, and then up the road like that for about 20 minutes while mum fed. And then after she was finished feeding, they brought it back to mum, and then it nursed, and then they did it again so she could carry on feeding. It was just like babysitting. It was uber cute. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And you'll see now that the other sibling has decided to move on, that the little one's now coming up towards the side of mum, and then also feeling a little bit more brazen with us. Our wind has changed a little bit, so smelling us a little bit there. And feeling comfortable and being more cheeky. They're always more cheeky when they're near mom, especially when they get a little bit older. I haven't thought of this story in a very long time. I was watching a young male, probably about 5 years old. This herd started to cross the road, and this young male decided he wanted to show us that he's a big male, so he comes running up to the vehicle, but he's little, comes running up to the vehicle going, and then moving away, and the mom trumpets and tummy rumbles like, come, you must go, leave these humans alone, and he doesn't listen, and he starts trying to push over this huge tree on us. Obviously he's too little, he's probably twice the size of this one we're looking at now. And then, mom tummy rumbles, he still doesn't listen, and she went out and she came back with a stick in her trunk, and she smacked this elephant like, listen, I've been telling you to leave those people alone, we're moving off, are you crazy? This little elephant put his ears half cocked in the back, and his tail was all stiff, and he sort of runs after mom. I think my guests and I laughed for a good hour after that. It was just like humans. It was the funniest thing. I'm sorry. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I haven't seen anything else like it. It was very, very, very sweet. I just want to reverse just a little bit so that we can see this